Hello, Uganda. Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Hotseat on 933 KFM. I welcome you, our listeners, across this beautiful land, the Pearl of Africa. My name is Patrick Kamara. On Wednesday, my panel is here. I have Senior Presidential Advisor, Mr. Moses Byarhanga. Thank you so much for joining us, Moses. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Patrick, my colleague in the studio, and our listeners out there.
We have from the Great Lakes Institute for Strategic Studies, Mr. Godbert Mushabe. Thank you so much for joining us. Good evening, sir.
Good evening to you. Good evening, our listeners and the colleagues in here.
And I must say, the setup in the studio today is much better than before. And of course, we have told you that the studio has been refurbished. But
we have also said the seats have not changed.
The seats have not changed.
But things are not supposed to say.
No.
But at least the setup.
In the interest of transparency,
the setup is much better.
But the setup is excellent. Yeah.
It looks beautiful.
It looks beautiful, and I think the team that is working on this need to be congratulated.
Sure.
Once they deliver on the seats, we'll give them grade A.
Okay.
Yeah.
Godbert, let me begin with you, Godbert. We have the entire cabinet of the Republic of Uganda and the technocrats, the permanent secretaries. For 1 week, from Sunday to Sunday, they are the Leadership Institute in Kwankwanzi. When you hear a cabinet has gone to that kind of retreat, and it's not a small cabinet, by the way, has gone to that kind of retreat. Yeah. I have seen them in the military camouflage. I've seen images of the president also in Kwankwanzi. But for you as a Ugandan, as a policy analyst, as a taxpayer, what would you want that cabinet that sits in Kwankwanzi Leadership Institute to be deliberating about, that when they come back, it's not business as usual for Uganda?
No, I want them to be discussing things and they come back and then it's not business as usual. But given the precedence is that they will go, it doesn't matter how long they spend there, they will come back and it will be business as usual.
No, give it to them also.
No, because the Kwankwanzi has been here. These guys go. The president has been there. He meets their MPs, he meets their ministers, permanent secretaries and heads of government agencies. Then they take sometimes they take these cows, then you hear they are teachers, then they are here what? Yeah, but I mean, in real terms, nothing much really changes. Because you see the way you change, the way you do things unusual is that you deal with the structural problems of society, of your business. If you have a company that is failing or that is not performing to your expectation, the only way you begin to turn it around and do business different is when you would identify the structural limitations within that company, within that business, and deal with the problems that are structural, not dealing with the consequences of the problem. Now, I have said time and again here that the president himself, Uganda is very unlucky that it has a president who is mentally programmed to be a life president. So most of the things that he's doing, he's thinking and doing, must be weighed against what do they mean for me for my power. What are the implications? So at this moment, even if President Museveni wanted, and I think when you hear him talk about transformation, you feel like, yeah, this is a guy who wants to do things different and cause change and cause transformation. But I think he's in a catch-22 situation where he's not capable.
So
of dealing.
Let me rephrase the question. When they're there, if it were you, what should they be discussing right now?
So I would say one, this country has structural problems. The first problem is political. So you have to deal with the politics or the governance of this country at the political level. Does Museveni have the capacity to take these people into a room and say, we are discussing, we are going to have elections where Ugandans feel like they own the country and they are going to be able to elect a president without killing each other? Because you see, our politics have become so toxic that the violence has been escalating up to 2021 when we had to kill people to elect a president. That's a structural problem. Number two, you have to look at the economy. The economy has been, if you look at it in aggregate terms, the economy has been progressing. GDP steadily growing.
Okay.
A number of things happening. I mean, you can see the services industry, booming one or the other. Agriculture is still has structural problems. But the point I want to make is that on the economy side, you want to be able to come up with measures that makes a leap. So in other words, if we are doing coffee and we're at 8 million bags, how do we get to 15 million, to 20 million, to 30 million? If we are doing tea and we're at these tons, how do we get to this? If you have an economy that is, because you see the structural problems with our economy now is that the sectors that are growing do not create jobs. This is mainly services, construction. So there is no shift in the labor force from agriculture to other sector, because the industry is not able to absorb this. So that's the structural problem. So you would want a team that is thinking of how do you shift this and deal with these structural problems. Thirdly, it's on the services, and for me the services is really education and health. A country that is not educated, that has a population that is not educated, and here I'm talking about quality education, I'm not talking about literacy. Because here we focus so much on literacy, read and write. Now I'm talking about you are educating your children to compete at the front lines of the global economy. So what is that you are doing to get there? And of course you have the health sector, where part of the problem with many of the countries like ours here is that because people do not get treated, and I have many of them in the village, my relatives. They are almost, in most cases, they are permanently sick. So you are sick, you go to a local health worker, you get some medication, there is no proper diagnosis, you are not fully sick, but also you are not healthy. So we call it the burden of disease. So in other words, because you are permanently sick, your level of productivity basically goes down. So these are really structural things that we would need to deal with. You need a team that sits in Kwankwanzi and locks themselves up and say, when they come here, I think in the morning I was on Morning Breeze and I said, if Museveni went to Kwankwanzi, right now the way his government is, and he wanted to demonstrate that I want to do things differently, I think he would come out of Kwankwanzi, dissolve his current cabinet, reconstitute a cabinet with probably new people, and say, give them matching orders. This is how I want things to be. But the one that has been recycling around, they really can't do things differently.
Okay, we're lucky we have a senior presidential advisor with us.
And no, he hasn't been to Kwankwanzi, so he don't know what's happening.
And perhaps he has an idea how all this began. Sometimes, by the way, he goes to Kwankwanzi to lecture some of those political leaders when they gather there. Perhaps he's even taking a lecture very soon. Mr. Moses, we are
putting it at a low level.
This is what our listeners and us, this is what we benefit from.
Sometimes the one who is responsible for the appointment.
Sometimes this is what we benefit from him.
Yes.
Where are your colleagues in Kwankwanzi?
Why are you making all those unnecessary comments? Those are unnecessary comments. Thank you, Patrick, for the question. Well, a retreat, this is time for cabinet. There are many retreats at Kwankwanzi. This is a retreat, as you mentioned, cabinet, permanent secretaries, and NRM secretariat, and NRM SEC members. The political,
or even SEC members are there.
Yes.
Are they in the same retreat?
Yeah, they're also there.
Interesting.
The secretariat is represented in cabinet by the national, by the Secretary General. He used to be National Political Commissioner. He's Secretary General.
The Secretary General sits in cabinet.
Yeah, on daily basis, on regular, as a member of cabinet. So is to reflect on what has happened the last year. Because it is done annually in the last year, financial year meaning, and then what's coming up in the next financial year. Some of the issues are to do what is the perception of the public on how as a government we are delivering services. So that informs what could we do, what can we do better. So there was somebody who gathered information, what is the public perception, and then if they are talking about your sector, health, education, roads and so forth, and this is what the public thinks, then the question is, how are you going to do it better? So to me, that's a very good thing, to listen to criticism, positive criticism, and use it as criticism to plan for a better future. Of course, among other things, there's also to talk about priorities in the next budget, of which the budget cycle starts around September, October. Now, if you agree on the priorities to be in that budget, in view of the NRA manifesto, in our case, and also the NDP 3, you prioritize within the scarce resources available, then you expect to get a better outcome. So what Godba is talking about, the service delivery sectors like health, education, all this is, as I was saying, there was a listening from the private sector, what do they think, what should be done better, and then discussions. So all those will be handled, what Godba is talking about. But I want to correct Godba when you talk about the political side, when he was saying that we had to kill for people to have elections. I think the kill is, he was talking about were they October riots?
Yeah, November riots.
November in 2020. But those riots, I don't think we didn't have. If you see, the Godbars and other people whom they call themselves civil society, they think anybody who goes on the street is a demonstrator. Demonstration, yes, is allowed in the constitution, but not rioting where you are killing police. In Uganda, we have had incidents where the rioters have killed the policemen. So it's not about that you had to kill, calling it political violence, election violence. That's not election violence. Even if tomorrow you had kind of such a riot, you can still have people being died. You remember there's a riots of Kawaka when we were going to Kayunga.
The Kayunga riot.
It was not an election time. So we need to be disciplined as Ugandans, as citizens. Yes, you can have your right to show displeasure, but don't end up in riots. Because you see, the rioters should not have right to kill people also.
But also, you know, Moses, our politics have been very deadly. Almost every election cycles, people will have somewhere they will die.
Well, we have had elections without any death. In that election,
the current Secretary General of FDC was shot at.
In the last election, listen, the last election, without those riots, where was the violence you're talking about? Huh? In the last election, because those riots, those were being dealt with as riots. It was not election violence. I wouldn't categorize it as such.
The violence.
Listen.
Hey,
I wouldn't categorize it as such, because for me, that was a rioting. I have seen riots in other countries when they turn, the demonstrations they turn into violence and riots. How the police handles them, not only in Uganda, it might not be different if it was anywhere else in the world, where the rioters are throwing stones at policemen. You do it anywhere in the world and see.
You ask goodbye. In Ntungamo municipality, every election almost
on the economy
becomes like a war zone.
On the economy, the Ugandan economy is doing relatively well compared to many in the world, in our region and in the world, especially in African context. The rate of growth of 6% is doing well. Your shilling is strong against the dollar. A few months ago, about 3 months ago, it went up just because in Kenya they were selling a euro bond at 10% interest on a dollar, which was high. So people here were buying dollars, were buying dollars, yes, to go and buy into the Eurobond, which was a good business for those who invested there. But now it has stabilized back to below 3,800 if you're buying, and if you're selling, it's slightly below. So that's if you have a strong currency and you have economic growth doing well. You have returns from coffee. Today we are almost getting $1 billion from exports of coffee. The only challenge we have on coffee is that we need to stop or to reduce exporting coffee in green beans and export it with value addition.
But that has been talked about for quite some time. Sometimes I wonder why they can't walk the talk, really.
We are starting. We are there. You know, there's this factory, is the factory in Tungamu, where Golduba comes from.
From the factory?
No, in Tungamu. Okay. Don't from Tungamu. Tungamu, where Golduba comes from. They are setting it up. Sooner it will be able to export coffee with value addition, and many more should be coming up. The private sector should be investing in those areas. The markets are there, are available in the various countries in the world. In any case, all the coffee drinkers, the majority of coffee drinkers have nothing to do with coffee farming, so they just receive the coffee. So if we can change and sell the coffee with value addition, either roasted or grind coffee, we'll have more tons for the country and the farmers.
Okay, Moses and Godba, gentlemen. Welcome back to 933 KFM, and this is the Hot Seat. My name is Patrick Amara. My guest this evening, I have Senior Presidential Advisor, Mr. Moses Byarhanga, and from the Great Lakes Institute for Strategic Studies, Mr. Godba Tomshabe. You know, Mr. Byarhanga has made his submission. He thinks when they are there, the economy is the fundamentals are okay, growing at 6%. We're better in the region or even on the continent. Well, it could even be a hure, a hure kind of trip in Kwankwanzi. But you don't agree, because sometimes the economic growth, the figures may look very good, but the person on the street doesn't feel it.
No, to be honest, I mean, I still believe that people like Moses and others.
And we're in a group, I should tell you, we're in a WhatsApp group, me and Moses and you and other guys. Moses has a tendency of always picking up something and throwing it. You see where we are. You see how the economy. Before I open it, I'm like, this
these
one
guys, you have to really give.
Every time you read something on the inside the business or the Economist, Moses will.
You hear Moses, you feel like, no, we are living in two different worlds. And the figures he's giving, by the way, I would say they're accurate, because that's the data that is, shared.
Yes.
So if you're thinking of economic growth, you are looking at GDP, per capita income has increased. So exports have increased. So it looks like really, credible data. But we also know that, for example, if you follow the National Development Plan, both 2 and 3, all the projections have been like, for Uganda, for economic transformation in Uganda to happen, you have to be growing at double digits. And I think for most of the economies that are in Uganda's bracket, you have to be able to trigger growth in double digit growth.
12, 11, 14.
10, 11, 12 there. For you to really feel the effect. So for smaller economies like ours, 5%, 6%, 7% growth is really not that significant. So it's it's a good story to tell, but actually it doesn't translate into substantive gains. And then it is even worse when those gains are happening in sectors that do not directly affect people. So if the gains, sectors like telecoms, so you'll find that most of the growth is coming from services industry.
Yeah.
So that's telecoms, that's insurance, that's banking. I think the biggest segment of the services sector which affects people directly is the border industry. But the rest of them. So when you hear Uganda, the biggest Uganda's biggest sector is services. at about 48-49%, you know that there are very few people who are actually involved in that economy. Then you'll find, manufacturing is at about 25, 26, 27%. There are very few people again that is involved. Agriculture, which still engages the biggest percentage of the population, has been in the area of around 20-23%
to the GDP.
As the contribution to GDP. Okay. Yeah. So basically, you are looking at the sector that employs the largest proportion of the population, contributing less and less to GDP. So that's the understanding. I think that's what we need to be looking at. And secondly, at a very personal level, I think each one of us feels the burden of an economy that is not functioning. So if you look at your school fees bill, the children that you look after, right from secondary school to high school to university, and these are relatives. Their parents are really working very hard because we work with them. So you see, these are parents who are working very hard, but they are not capable of paying for their children. So you have to subsidize or take them up. When you think of the medical bills, you realize you have to pick up medical bills for some people. And let me tell you, Patrick, this is at a personal level, but almost every friend of yours you'll talk to will tell you that's exactly the same story. So these are two parallel worlds that people like Moses and others live in, and they feel there is movement in the positive direction. There is another world where most of us feel life is hard because it's expensive. It's costly on the economy. The burden that each one of us who have some reasonable income, the burden you carry is very, very expensive, not only to you as a person, but also to the economy. And then finally, you know, I still go back to Ntungamo. I look at Ntungamo and I'm like, okay, this place is generally it should be generally be okay.
You people are better off.
So sometimes we say, Uganda has been a conflict country. It was a lot of instability here. But if you think of Ankole, I don't think that Ankole has suffered any instability in real terms, other than probably the brutality of the Amin's regime, which affected many places. But Ankole, I remember Ntungamo during the 1979 war, when we were supposed to be going also as refugees. We packed our things, we hid them, and we were waiting for a bullet to be fired, and we ran. Mm-hmm. And eventually, the Tanzanian army and those UNLF people, they came. We didn't go as refugees. So, in other words, of all these places like Ntungamo, like Mbara, they should be okay. And when you look at the landscape and you see the housing, the electricity, which Moses normally talks about, you feel like, okay, this place is okay. But then when you interact with the households, the people who come to work on my farms, on my coffee farms, and you feel like, no, there's something that as a country we are not paying attention to. Because let me just conclude this thought by saying this. In May, at the beginning of May, I was doing weeding on one of my coffee plantations. This is 9 acres. So I needed, and this was it, the weed had overgrown because of the rains. So I really needed many people. So I told my teams and said, mobilize as many people as possible to come and work on the farm. So one of the days we had 285 people working on the farm. And I keep on sharing this story. Out of the 285, over 90% of them were women. Of the 90%, approximately 80% of them were young women between the age of 12 and 26.
Why are you child labor? That's child labor.
No,
between the ages of what?
12 and 26.
That's child labor. At least
which child now?
12.
Which child? You guys, you don't understand, because I was working on the farm at age 6. So what are you talking about? But that's besides the point. But the point I'm trying to make is that the children I have been telling Moses about here, the dropouts, the school dropouts, I came face to face with them because most of these girls.
And which month was this?
Beginning of May. This May. So I came face to face with the children whom I have been looking in the data of school dropouts in education, because most of these girls.
You finally saw them.
I saw them physically. P3, P4, P5. I have them. I have the data.
And the 20-something, whatever, probably they're young mothers. They're single mothers.
Some of them are young mothers.
And the men are nowhere to be seen.
So in other words, if we take away the semantics of the aggregate data, which we all talk about because we all come from the professional backgrounds, and deal with the reality on the ground, you really feel like if I was seated in Moses' position, that is the one thing that would make me lose sleep every single day.
Let me go to Moses. Moses, right now, some farmers are actually suffering. You yourself are a farmer. If you're in the sugar farming industry business now, what we are hearing, you're not getting money as you expected. The sugar prices have come down. So it appears Busoga is going to suffer. Uganda is suffering in trying to look for the market for their produce in the sugar industry. What can the cabinet do on matters like those?
Well,
when they sit in Kwankwanzi.
During the State of National Address,
you can also respond to Goodbuz's queries, but briefly, because
during the State of National Address, the President mentioned that he had talked to his colleagues in the region to stop non-tariff barriers. If Cabinet can emphasize that, and all understand that today Uganda's challenge is not production in some of the sectors, it is the market. Markets. Talk of sugar, talk of milk, talk of maize, talk of beans, talk of so many things. The challenge is the market. And one of the markets is a regional market, which includes Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, the EAC in general, and of course the African market. So within the EAC, Uganda has been so good to the neighbors that we don't impose non-tariff barriers.
We need to start too, because if every country around us is imposing non-tax barriers,
then we'll be contributors to the fall of the EAC. So we cannot be party to that. Uganda cannot be party to that. We have made it very clear. It is our duty.
They have made us the punching bag. Everybody wants to have a go at us.
But with time, they will see it. They will see the benefits. Of course, in the last, I mentioned it here before, in the year 2023, a calendar year, Uganda exported to Kenya goods worth $1.5 billion US, and we imported from Kenya goods worth about $900 million. So the trade between Uganda and Kenya was in favor of Uganda, notwithstanding some of the non-tariff barriers imposed by Kenya. So without those non-tariff barriers, especially on sugar and
milk and
maize, will do much better. Today, the maize price in the villages is low. In fact, many maize traders who had bought maize for the last season, hoping at a high price, hoping that they will be able to resell it at a higher price. Many have burnt their fingers. But if that maize could be transformed into maize flour and maybe made the animal feeds from it through industrialization, that wouldn't be being experienced. Because now many people just buy the maize, hold it, and expect to sell it at a higher price in the next season. But it hasn't happened. So for me, if the cabinet can emphasize the issue of markets, how do we look for markets? How do we make production costs lower? We should have the issue of electricity being high. We need to bring it much lower. How do we reduce the cost of doing business in Uganda? Those would bring in the market. Now, internally, with the PDM, where we are trying to bring more people in the money economy, we have so far, I think, spent about 2.4 trillion on the PDM, bringing in, helping the poor families in the villages to engage in the production.
They will go into maize that was already fetching low price.
Wait.
And then what happens?
Our advice has been very clear. Do coffee. Do fruits.
Coffee with 1 million, eh?
Yeah. You can do an acre of coffee.
Yeah, sure.
You can.
Yeah, sure.
I'm sure.
Maybe sugar cane, but not coffee.
No, how much is a seedling?
Eh?
How much is a seedling?
2,500.
1,500, you can get good seedlings.
No, not 1,500.
So you can get, that was a calculation. It is enough to do an acre of coffee. At least now you buy you enough seedlings. So if they invest in those areas through using PDM funds, then you will increase the local market, because the moment your own people get more money, the internal market expands. Now the internal market is made smaller simply because of the access to money. So if incomes go up, then demand also goes up. So that alone will increase industrialization in the country, will increase demand for even local products. Instead of trying to sell sugar to Kenya and milk to Kenya, you'd have more internal consumption.
Okay, gentlemen, let's take a mega milk break. I'm going to be right back.
The finance bill.
Welcome back to 933 KFM, and this is the Hot Seat. My name is Patrick Amara. My guests this evening, I have Senior Presidential Advisor Mr. Moses Biarhanga, and from the Great Lakes Institute for Strategic Studies, Mr. Godbert Mushaba. Moses has taken us through. He's very hopeful. He's a very optimistic person. And sometimes, even when we're down, Moses gives us hope. But he's the glass full kind of guy.
Before you bring in Patrick,
he's never the glass half empty.
Before you bring Kamara, you see, you mentioned about the sugar cane. I know, because of being unplannedness, you see, about a year ago, the price of sugar cane went up to 240,000 shillings per ton. And that was extremely too high. It was temporary. In the sugar cane business, a price within 140 to 150,000 would be fair. So we had that too high of a price. It has come down now to about 140,000 a ton. If it stayed there, it would be fair enough to make the manufacturer or the miller produce for the Ugandan market and export market. If it is too high, like at 140,000, I can assure you the sugar from Brazil lands at Mombasa at $600, including transport. If the cane price is at 240,000 per ton, the cost of cane, which makes 1 ton of sugar, would be at around $700.
So we cannot compete with Brazilian sugar that has come all the way from Latin America.
You can't export it.
But at the end of the day, I don't understand even this sugar thing. The sugar thing.
Go to understand coffee.
I see us begging the Kenyans, whatever, but
so let me tell you.
And yet here, almost every district wants to have a sugar factory.
Let me say this. Maybe you can, since you are seated in that strategic position, you can pick it up. 2 years ago, a colleague of mine and I proposed to some people in the Ministry of Trade, because you see, sugar factory licensing is under Ministry of Trade. So we proposed that actually we can develop a mechanism where all these sugarcane farmers are registered. Yeah. And what do you do? What do you do? You register them. They know the planting season, that as a country, you can be able to project the amount of cane you're going to be producing at any one time.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, once you have that data, you can even be able to organize the access to these factories. Who is selling which cane where? So there should be no point when the government does not know where the cane that has been produced is going. Because the instability that comes in, normally this instability, there is a way it affects the planning of these farmers like Moses and others. So as the whole reason government is supposed to be present is to help these people plan, because the private sector, our private sector, the Moseses and us, for example, in the coffee and wherever, we've not reached the level of organization to be able to do this on our own. So that's why these government agencies would be the ones now planning, working with these farmers to plan. But this whole thing, because we have done it in maize, in where now you see people are suffering with the tea, there must be a way, government people become more creative. They plan. Even when you know you are going to have a glut, you should be knowing. And then you can plan ahead on how to respond. So a lot of this that we are dealing with is really about the planning.
I agree. I agree on the sugar sector. It was let down by the Ministry of Trade without proper rules and regulations. That's why there are those instabilities. You see, at one stage, you remember around 2000, when we started the COVID lockdown, there was too much sugar cane. And they were talking of exporting it to Kenya as raw. That's not easily feasible because sugar cane, after harvesting, it must be crushed within 4 days. That. So the process of exporting would take much longer for that sugar to give you enough the sugar cane to give you enough sugar you'd need. So it wasn't viable to export cane to sugar. Now, because they had been unplanned, at one time there was too much cane.
That's what happens.
And when there was too much cane, people pulled out. When they pulled out, last year there was scarcity.
Yes.
That's why the price went too high.
Then people went in.
But you see, when you plant, sugar takes at least 18 months before the first harvest. So if you plant it today in 24, you harvest in 2026, early 2026. So by that time, you don't know the dynamics of the price. The dynamics would have changed. Okay. So in fact, some discussions to the sugar millers has been, the big ones like Kirugazi, like Chikakira, has been, why don't we come up with farmer agreements? We say, we say...
We're buying at this price?
We shall buy this price. As I plant, we agree, the price, minimum would be this. And the idea of Sugar Board in the Sugar Act had come out with such an arrangement of an agreed minimum price.
What about the fluctuation of prices in the region?
See, the region is affected by many things. You see, the region is protected. You see, under ESC, even when the sugar from Brazil lands at Mombasa at $600, including transport, you remember when you're taxing, you don't tax the transport bit. The sugar from Brazil will be $450. The transport per ton, the transport from Brazil to Mombasa, $150 per ton. But if you're taxing, you tax the sugar price, not the inclusive of transport. Now, under the ESC agreement, the taxes which are put on sugar from outside the region protects the sugar produced within the region. But also the one in the region should not be too expensive.
But I think, I think you're making a good point. But I think that where we are missing it is that for us as government of Uganda, because I think sugar is still a good sector to invest in, to grow. For me, I'm looking for a government that thinks strategically and say we can be big sugar producers in this region. So what is the plan? It is not even about the sugar millers. The sugar millers are part of our infrastructure to be able to achieve this. So really, I keep on saying, no, we just have to have a government that has people who think strategically and plan and say, in this region, we are going to be good, big sugarcane producers because we have the resources, we have the land, we have the weather, we have entrepreneurs. So what is the plan? We can be big coffee producers. What is the plan? So I think that's where we're failing. And for sugarcane, for sure, you have to be able to predict, because it's a good crop because of the length of time it takes.
5 years.
Yeah. So in other words, I can say, Moses has planted. The data is there. If Moses has planted now, this cane is going to be ready for harvesting after 18 months. So you can be able to predict that.
That's okay. You see, at some stage, when the Sugar Act was in Parliament, the politicians messed it up because the millers were saying, me as a miller, I need to know which farmers are under me, who supply me. And me, the sugarcane farmer, I want to know who will harvest who will take my cane when it's ready for harvest. But people say, no. Let the farmer say to whoever they want. Now, in that case, when the miller doesn't know who will supply him, and me, the farmer, doesn't know whom I will supply. That's why there was that challenge in 2020 I'm talking about, when there was too much sugar, because the farmers went in without knowing who they will sell to.
Okay.
No,
They went in saying, I will sell to whoever is available.
The one of looking farmers, I think I also don't agree with it. What I need to do is that I have this dashboard.
Yeah, but whom do you sell? Yes.
No, you see, these are producers of sugar cane.
Yeah.
They are factories, and they are coming to this. You are not necessarily dealing with some modified stock exchange where I know if I'm sourcing cane.
You know what
this is why
happened?
cane.
What happened during that time? What happened during that time? Because there was no predictability of which miller would receive which cane. So some of the millers went and bought land, invested, and put up their own plantations.
Okay, away from the sugar business.
When they were harvesting,
away from the sugar business. I wanted to listen to you because the sugar business
is a serious issue. So when when the millers like Rugazi has about 10 square miles of land in Kayunga, they bought after and planted the sugar cane. They have now bought another 10 square miles of land in Nakaseke and planted the sugar cane because of the instability of not knowing who to supply you. Kakira has also about 10 square miles of land in Kayunga where they planted sugar cane.
So the outgrowers are going to suffer.
They planted because see, unless there is the stability. Because the farmers were not ready.
You're also missing the point.
Missing the point. The farmers were not ready to say, I want to be associated with this.
I will be supplying this miller.
They were saying, I want to supply whoever is available. The miller said, I can't just run a factory without knowing who will supply me. Let me plant my own cane.
Okay. the sugar business aside, do you buy into the optimism of Moses that now government has put in about 2.5 trillion shillings into...
No, you know, Moses
the Paris development model.
There's a
glut in maize production, and the prices are so low, and yet the real maize is yet to come.
No, Patrick, these guys are very strange people. Me, I don't know, because you see, Moses and a couple of other people describe bringing people money into the monetary economy because they have done PDM. You see, giving money to people is not how you brought them into the monetary economy.
No, but you have to give them money for them to do business.
Yeah, because you see, the fact that you've given them money doesn't mean that they are going to do sustainable, durable businesses. Because you can give me 1 million shillings, I'll go and
some will, others will not. Because everybody is not an entrepreneur.
Some will. Some will. But what I'm saying that in terms of policy prescriptions, it doesn't have enough nuances to say that because I have distributed 2.5 trillion, I have brought people into the monetary economy. I think that people getting into the monetary economy means that they are engaged in commercial production or they are engaged in paid work. Now, my thinking is that when you go to the rural areas like where I come from, and you look at the nature of land ownership and the land scarcity, the way you bring money into people into the monetary economy is really to create paid work, and I think the government approach of saying we are promoting the private sector. So in other words, we are getting the private sector to grow it, and because private sector is the one that creates work, they create jobs. So I would want to see a much more dynamic process of how do you create the local private sector. Because you can't create the local private sector by saying you are giving money to some household there in the village. No,
you're suggesting that if people get some money, there are some who are enterprising.
They are entrepreneurs. Absolutely, they're entrepreneurs in this way. In fact, at some point, I have even argued and said, I wish this money that people sit here in Kampala and plan for it on how to distribute it. I wish the money was at the district level, and we're dealing with how do you manage the district so that the local private sector within the district is able to access this money, and they are accountable to the leadership and the people within the district. so that
you seem to be opposed to money going directly to the parish.
No, I'm very, very opposed to this thing because I think it's disruptive. Because you see, the money has gone there right from the poverty eradication action plan.
But this is kind of different because actual money is going directly without even middlemen directly to them.
Yeah, no. So okay, we can say because you see,
100 million
right from
per parish is quite some money.
Per parish,
yeah.
But 1 million per individual.
Yeah,
isn't it? Yeah, because I like the idea that it was made substantive because I think if someone was enterprising and got 1 million, he probably can think of something. But when you look at our approach from the time of the Poverty Eradication Action Plan, the NADS, the Bonaba Gagaware, all these schemes, the Nyuga, the Women Enterprise Fund, the whatever. So every time I go to the village, because I'm a researcher, when I go to Ntungamu, I am looking at which group has transformed because this money became available. You mainly meet people who are, even when you meet beneficiaries, they are the regular people. In other words, I am here. I seem to be okay, but I am regular. It's not like I have created the next one or two jobs. Maybe.
Can I make a comment? You see, the reason we shifted from those other programs is the very reason, is what we talk about. The challenges with, through NADS and the UCDA, the coffee seedlings which were given out, the question now will be whom were you giving, but they were given out. Today you can see the coffee exports earning Uganda about $1 billion in a year, which had never happened before, showing there was success to some extent in this program. Now the idea here was, how do we reach the common person? If we create a village, a parish circle, we put their money, the people in that parish sit among themselves and see whom do almost everybody will get with time. The question of time, the question we will start with. Those who are here in need, what about the 39% in subsistence economy? In 3 years, we'll have finished all of them. Because they were, in the last year census, there were about 3.5 million households. Now, if you're handling 1 million households every year, in 4 years you have done with all those people in the money economy. So the question is whom to start with. Now, if you go for the other, I was in Luero in the end of April, meeting the beneficiaries in Luero. There was a story today in New Vision associated with that. One person told us, said he had got 1 million shillings. He bought 10 piglets at 100,000 per piglet, which is a fair price, fed them for 2 months, and sold them at 500,000 each, earning a gross of 5 million in 2 months. If you maybe put in 1 million for feeding, 1 or 2, he had about 3 million in terms of profit. Now, this person, if they reinvest in either in piglets or something else, they are making good stories. There are many success stories I have been confronted with in this short period. About people who have done different things. Of course, for those who went into coffee, it takes some time, about 18 months. So maybe those who got money last year and went into coffee, they will harvest by the end of this year, and those long-term products. But those who went into poultry, the other day I was talking to the coordinator of PDM, Honorable Galavs. He said in Masindi city, many people had gone into poultry. The challenge now was there were so many eggs, and they were looking for a market. They were swimming for a market. Those are good challenges.
Sometimes it's a good problem to have.
Yeah. So meaning people have invested the money in the right area. Because there are those who divert it, but
normally those ones will also
be there. So out of 100 people earning getting 1 year in a parish, if 60 to 70% invested in areas we expect them to invest in, that's good progress. And with time, it might not be easy to see the progress today, but I'm sure, but if you went to your parish and talked to the leaders, even say, but this parish should receive what? And let me go and visit them. I give you that.
I'm actually
I give you maybe a month or so, when you will come here and tell, yeah, I've seen somebody or 2 or 3 or 4 people who have got the money from PDM, they have done ABCD, they either have a problem with the market, but they have least invested in ABCD. Those stories are there around the country. In fact, now what is the challenge to ensure that the money reaches the beneficiaries in the shortest possible time without many roadblocks.
Okay, gentlemen, in the interest of time, each one of you 1 minute. Good, but what's going to be a concluding remark on the show tonight?
Leadership of this country.
Yes, they are.
Yeah, so I think they need to. I think if I had my way, I would actually lock them up there and just say, first send us the blueprint of what you've come up with. In other words, they should send us, we review it, and say, if we are not convinced that when they come out of the business, it's going to be business as usual, we keep them there and say, please review, send back until we see a blueprint of how you do things differently in this country, because I think there's too much business as usual that we do, and I don't feel like we have the fierce urgency of now in terms of running a country that is able to prepare itself and prepare its people to play and compete at the front lines of the global economy.
I think you really need to maybe give them a lecture on policy which matters. Since you're a policy analyst, maybe that's a Kalango in the making. But what's going to be your parting shot, Mr. Yarhan?
A policy analyst might not be a policy maker. That's what different.
No, yeah, no. For us, we tell policy makers how they should think about things.
They analyze what others have made. So when we are working on a manifesto, we do policy really. We propose policy and it gets through. I'm happy some of these things like PDM were part of what we are part of what we wrote in the manifesto. They are being implemented, and we are happy. The whole from Kwankwanzi, what I expect that yes, the government system should improve in terms of response to issues which are affecting the people and service delivery. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you so much. And that brings us to the end of tonight's edition of the Hot Seat. Good night and God bless.